Lisa. I'm embarking on a mixed media 3D project for my mantle. I want a summer scene for my mantle. I have something I put up for Valentine's Day. I have an elaborate thing I do for Christmas, which I did a video on this past holiday season. But it's kind of bare in the summertime. There's stuff sitting on the mantle, but I just want a change, and I thought it'd be fun to do something crafty to go up there. So I've seen, these great big rosettes, and I have a small a video that I've done where you do the little small rosettes or accordion flowers, whatever you want to call them, for your scrapbook pages and other craft projects. It's been a really popular video. I'm going to do some large ones. I think I want to do a bird theme to this. I know I do now. When I first started, I wasn't sure what I wanted. But I'm going to have a bird and a bird house. And I did this little sketch. I actually kind of did this after I started the project, just so you could see, because I had this sort of in my head what I want on my mantle. I want a banner that connects them. It's asymmetrical, a larger composition on the left with perhaps one of those large rosettes, maybe some small ones as well. I don't know, there may be some little ones. There's going to be some more stuff in here. I just don't know what yet that I'm going to put in here. And the bird will be on the right with some leaves behind it, and those will probably be cut out of chipboard or papers and a lot of Mod Podge to this project. And then a banner connecting it with something hanging down, maybe pom-poms, who knows. I still don't know what I'm going to put it there. Just going to be a fun little project that I work on as I have time. So I started this by getting into the attic and looking for birds. That's where I keep my Christmas decorations. I really wanted to go buy a summery looking bird, like maybe in blue or something, some kind of different colors. Our Hobby Lobby store moved a few months ago across town, and it's not in the town I live in, but in a neighboring town, and it was very conveniently located to me. Since they've moved, I've been there twice. I'm just not going to drive way over there, and there's no other craft store. There's nowhere else to get an artificial bird, so I thought I'd just make do with what I have, and I got in my attic, and I pulled out several birds that are part of my Christmas decorations. I actually took some of them off a tree to get them to work. This is my latest one. My mother bought this one for me. It's so pretty, but I feel like it's a little more formal, dressy kind of bird. I want a nature looking one. So I got down to these two, and this one faced the correct way. So this is the one we're going to use. I think this one came off a Christmas wreath years and years ago. It's beautiful, very lifelike. Well, I don't know if it's lifelike, but it looks more lifelike to me, bird. So then I figured out what size birdhouse I would need for it. And I've made my birdhouse. I did the hole first and then went from there. That in theory this bird could go in. It's probably too big a hole, I don't know. I'm not an expert on birds. I have a feeder and that's about it. I cut this out of chipboard, just cut it by hand, and you can see I have taped it together with some washi tape. And it looks kind of rickety. That's fine. It's going to get a lot of other paper with Mod Podge and paints and things on it, and it doesn't actually have to support anything, so it doesn't matter if it's, real sturdy. This is its roof. I'm keeping that separate so it'll be easier to decorate. I think it's got a little bit too much of an overhang right now. It's probably going to need to be trimmed down. Now, the day after I constructed this, because the first thing I did, of course, was look to see if I had a box or something I could use. Day after this box came in the mail from my husband, and so this would have made absolutely perfect. Could have cut a hole for the bird and cut two of these off or tuck them down inside, and there would have been my birdhouse, perfect birdhouse. With all I had to do was add a roof. I haven't thrown this away because I still might use it. I'm thinking, well, maybe this will get larger and I'll have two birdhouses and multiple birds. Who knows? I might get to Hobby Lobby one of these days. So I'm hanging on to this. I think this is what I'm going to start decorating. If it doesn't turn out right, I've always got that box to fall back on. For the large rosette, I wanted to use some papers and things that I have. A lot of this is using stuff that I have in my stash that I want to give a good home to, have some fun with, use some stamps and stencils and things I haven't used in a while. These papers were a gift to me. They are from American Crafts from the Monogram collection, and there's some pretty designs here. I just have a lot of them. And so I've tended to use the solid signs, but some of them do have a monogram on them. This was the one I used to test, and I don't think that's going to be a big deal. I can conceal that in the folding. I just need some more pattern. It's too plain. So I'm going to start off with doing some jelly printing on this, and then I'll come back and add some paper and stuff to this. I'm not going to film every bit of this. I'm just going to show a few things here and there as I go along with the project. I want to just have something relaxing and fun, and it would be an incredibly long video if I filmed everything. I know that some other things that might go on there, I have picked out some papers. The bird was part of the color scheme. Where'd he go? There it is. And so I found these particular papers, also a gift. Some of this, I think this was stuff I bought. This is from October Afternoon. I think it was part of a box that I bought. And then a lot of this is gift stuff. So there was these cool wood veneer cards. These larger cards are kind of hard to use, and I have some more of these that I have bought that don't have anything on them that I might pull out and add those to my display. So I've got tons of stuff in my mixed media supplies. I have flowers and things that I could use. So I'm just gonna, keep working on it and adding some things to it as I have time. To add some design to this rather plain paper, I have my 3x5 jelly plate. I'm going to coat it with several acrylic paints. These are pretty cheap acrylics, nothing fancy. And I'm using some of my larger rubber stamps. And then cleaning these is just a brush and water to clean the stamps when you're done. So I'm just going to put several different ones on here, and then I'm going to stamp the design off on some scrap paper, and that ends up making a really pretty piece. But I do this with several different stamps, and I have cut these 6 inches by 12 inches, and then I'm scoring them at 3/4 of an inch. I'm folding this up using a good bone folder to make good creases. And it takes 4 pieces like this. So I started with 2 12x12s, cut them in half, and then it's going to take 4 pieces, and I'm still going to add a little bit of paper to join them, just some scrap cardstock. You can just glue the sections together, but it takes some of your main body, and I needed as much of that as possible. So I've joined the sections together, adding some glue to a scrap piece of paper, pushing the whole thing together, and gluing it on. And this is just like the small accordion flowers. It's just in a bigger version. And then on the top we can put a button, or we can put another sheet of paper. I just take I just took a scrap circle of scrap paper, and then I have a couple here that I did with just 1 sheet of designer paper, cutting it in to 4 sections, I believe it was, and pulling those together. Now, for the birdhouse, we're adding lots of different book papers. I have those on my Etsy shop. And again, this video is just to give you an idea about the project. It's not meant to be instructional on every step of doing this. This was an experiment, just playing, just sort of doing a project share here. And I'm just putting a whole bunch of different book papers on here, and then I'm going to add some paint to them, do some stenciling, that kind of thing. It's kind of rough. That's okay. And I've added some different shades of rosy colored paints, kind of go with the bird. And then I did beige and gold on the roof. And what I'm also adding on the roof is some fiber paste that I'm mixing with a little bit of ink refill. This is it's one of the browns that I had in my collection, and I'm just using that to add some color to it. And then I'll stencil on some of this design. I want to, kind of give it a look like a roof, using one of Crafter's Workshop stencils with I think it's called Mini Cubus. It's one of my favorites. I actually bought this one on Amazon. I loved it so much and I couldn't find it anywhere else at the time. I've also stenciled along the front with a design and did some other stenciling here and there. I'm making a hole for the perch, and I'll use a little twig there. and then I'm just going to glue the roof on. I'd used a ton of hot glue for this, and I did make a mistake here. It doesn't look like it, but what you'll find when I start to pull all this together is I really should not have had an overhang on the back of this roof, because you're not going to see the back side of the house, and it would have fit so much better if I had made it flush in the back. And I kind of thought about that as I was going, but I didn't think it would be a big deal, and it would have made the project go so much better. Now, I want the roof a little bit darker, so one of the ways I do that is I add some vintage photo ink to my Mod Podge, and when you put this on, it's going to be light, but as it dries, it will darken. Now, I'm starting here with some antique linen, which just makes a slight discolor, color, but when I add the vintage photo, see, it's getting quite a bit darker, and I'm going to put that on the roof. And we'll see the dried version of it in a few moments, and it really adds a lot of color, especially where it sort of puddles up on that stenciling. It's just one of the things I like to do to create an aged look on some of my projects. All right, it's dried now, and you can see how dark that is, and it does add a dark look to the top of that roof. Now, I cut some leaf designs on the silhouette. I cut them out of some white, very thin white chipboard. It's actually old Creative Memories pages that you used in albums, which I don't use those anymore, so I had some left over, and that's perfect chipboard with the silhouette. And then just some designer paper. So just cut 2 of each thing in different sizes here to have some leaves, and I'm going to Mod Podge them to the chipboard and then add a layer on the top so that I can add some paint and some other, again, some mixed media looks. So this project combines regular designer paper just as is, like I did in the large accordion circle designs, and then using some mixed media techniques to add a little color, a little stenciling. I don't think I stamped anything on these, but I could have. Actually, I did do some stamping. There's one later on where I stamped with a background stamp and some archival ink. Okay, so here's where my bird is going to go, and this was another accordion design that I created off camera. I'm gluing a couple of these leaf designs down to it. And I have gone out in my yard and pulled some twigs off the tree, places that needed trimming up anyway, and that's what I'm going to use for my bird's perch here in just a moment. So just lots of hot glue, and here it is going on. And when I put this on, I kind of had it overhang the edges because I thought I would want some wire sort of holding it in place. I never ended up needing that. I just used the Mod Podge. I did use wire later on to get the bird to stand up right. So I put wire around his body and then went around behind the leaves, and that's all it took to make him stand up properly. And this was some of the design of things that came from the papers, and I'll have to put that on the screen which pack of papers these were from Basic Gray. Now I'm putting this grouping together, and this was the most challenging to put together, and I thought I could maybe just join it with some cardstock, but I decided I needed chipboard, and they're not all, some are laying in front of others. So I got one glued on, and I tried briefly to glue the others directly on there, but I didn't have flexible enough chipboard, and what I had to do was add a spacer. And what I used for a spacer was just some old welt cord that I didn't need anymore. And that worked fine for that project. But here's where it would have been really beneficial for that roof to have been flush with the back of the birdhouse, so it would have laid flat, because I tried doing a spacer in here when I put the birdhouse on, and it didn't work very well. What I needed for the birdhouse is something for it to sort of sit on, so I took some chipboard and folded it and created a little shelf. And this is going to go up the back of the entire project, and you see the birdhouse is going to sit on it, and then these rosettes are going to be in between the birdhouse and the little shelf. And again, this would have worked better if I had trimmed that roof down. This was about the point where I almost trashed this project. I was nearly done, and I was so frustrated it nearly went in the garbage, but I'm glad I stuck with it. And I did end up using a little thread through the top of the birdhouse like it's hanging to sort of help hold it in place on my mantle. And here it is on the mantle. So there's a cord that runs through the top of the birdhouse and it goes over the rosette, and then I have a weight on top of the mantle that sort of holds all this in place and keeps it from falling down. I'm not advocating any of this necessarily for your mantle. This is just sharing a project. We do not use our fireplace. It has never had a fire in it, does not have gas logs or anything. So there's not a danger here, but if you used your fireplace, you'd certainly want something that was a little sturdier than what I have here. And then I did a little garland between the two sections, just a simple garland. I had to weight the back of those elements as well to keep them standing up there good, but it all came together in the end. And here's the bird and the leaves and all on the right side of the mantle. I had a time with one of those leaves. I wasn't happy with the color, but I kept adding color and kept adding color until I finally was pleased with them. So I did this project over several days. It may have been like 2 or 3 weeks, but anyway, it's all done now, and thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the project. Just kind of a quick glimpse at something different that I had going on in my craft room in the last few weeks. Thanks again.